At the time of recording this video, it is December 8th, 2024, and GUKESH has taken the lead in the World Chess Championship in round 10. This has been a very even match so far. The first few games we had a win here and there, and it was tied up for 7 games in a row. We just had draws, but we finally get a decisive result. So let's hop in. GUKESH, starting with the white pieces, of course, here. Let's see how it unfolds, shall we? We have knight f3, so we're starting off with a little ready over here from GUKESH, and Ding responds with d5. We get c4. Now, me personally, I know nothing about the ready because I don't play it. I am an e4 player. I played d4 for a while, but, decided e4 was fun too. But knight f3 is, I'll leave that to the pros. We get d5 and c4 here. Just skip through a few opening moves and boom. Already on move 3, we have a very exciting opening. Like, this is just, like, weird stuff going on. e3 here, proposing a gambit. This is the ready opening, ready gambit declined, advanced, reverse Blumenfeld gambit, according to the chess.com openings database. But, I mean, this is like, you would never see this in one of your games. Like, not one of my games, maybe one of yours, I'm not sure. I mean, this could be played by 2,800 players. It could also be a random opening played by 2 people rated 400. Who knows? But the way this unfolds is very interesting because most games at this point continue with taking the pawn, right? Accepting the gambit. Black is up a pawn. Just up a pawn. But the point is that white gets this big fat center, the semi-open F file for their use, the queen possibly going to A4, the bishop to the long diagonal here, and you just get very quick development, right? You play bishop D3, you play castles, you get A3 to get your bishop open to this diagonal on the A3 to F8 diagonal here. And yeah, it's going to be a little tricky because if black tries to castle, right, then maybe you start, continuing with your development here. And you get a game, king H1 to get off of this, and you get the file and the center and the active pieces. But anyway, I digress. What happens here, instead of taking the pawn and accepting the gambit, look at the time. Look at the time for a moment. And this has been a common thing with Ding, a common thing for Ding, is the poor use of time. Now, mind you, this guy's rated like 1,000 points higher than me, so I'm not one to judge. But here, my guy spends almost 40 minutes on his next move. It is move 4. It is move 4 of this game in the World Chess Championship, and my guy spends 38 minutes to play knight to f6 to decline the gambit. Knight to f6. I saw a headline. I didn't look into the article, though. I should have. But I read a headline that said, Ding Loren says he spent 40 minutes calculating nonsense variations in the opening. I was like, okay, guys. But no, knight f6, spending 40 minutes on that is wild. So, spoilers, my cat just ran in here. Make sure he doesn't eat any of my cords. He's been running around. But anyway, knight f6, and GUKESH just continues, playing his opening moves. He plays a3 here, just, saying, okay, well, you're no longer going to win my b4 pawn. It's solid now. But Jasper, ein Moment. Had to kick my cat out of the room. He's insane. Anyway, where were we? Bishop to g4 here, and we take in the center. Ding takes back. And now just h3 takes, and let's see what we have here. GUKESH up like over an hour on the clock, which is pretty cool. That would be a nice thing to have in a chess game. A very active queen. That's nice. Pretty nice center. I mean, this d4 pawn, possibly e5 could be annoying from black, but I mean, you get bishop b2 maybe, you get d3, you get castles pretty soon after bishop here or here, and you got the bishop pair, right? And what does black have but one piece out and the rest of them on the back rank? It's going to be a few moves before you can castle. And queen c7 here. We get d3, which is a bit odd. I mean, I wouldn't say odd. I mean, it makes sense, right? It solidifies your pawn formation here, and you get a nice little wedge. But the computer really wanted c5 to be the move. The computer really wanted this, the Stockfish approved stamp on this move here, c5. Just keeping this formation instead of playing d3 for this wedge. You want to take more space and take away some squares over here, and also you keep your bishop open. When you play d3, then your bishop is kind of locked out, right? But you keep the bishop open here and you have options. But, instead, I keep jumping. Let's get back here. We get d3 and a5, right? b5. So it's kind of like an inverse of the other formation that we saw, right? Instead of a3, b4, c5, we have d3, c4, b5. It's interesting. But you see here, the bishop is just not having a great time. It's locked in, right? And the other pawn's, structure over here, the bishop had space to get out. So let's see what happens. Ding continues development, and although he's down an hour on the clock, he's got a nice position. I mean, let's take a few moves later. The knights get a very nice positioning in the center, piling up on the d3 pawn, which is extremely weak. And Gukesh doesn't have very good development. The knight is going to struggle to get out because of this d4 pawn, and yeah, it's just not looking too great for white. Because this pressure is fun and all, but there's no king over there, and the knights are just dominating the center. So the queen moves up to f4, opening up the light squared bishop and pinning the knight on e5. So we get rook to d8 here and rook to d. Oh man! So remember how on move 4 Ding spent 40 minutes, 38 minutes on his move. Gukesh now on move 15 decides to return the favor and spends an hour, 60 minutes and 17 seconds on his next move, which is wild. Rook to d1. It's not even the best move. The computer wants to say, screw the pawn. We got to get our pieces out, right? We got to develop knight d2, and maybe we get knight takes, and you blunder your queen. I don't think that would be, what happens. Maybe the other knight could take, for example, and we get b6 hitting the queen. You can't take it, or the knight on e5 falls. If you take it, then queen e4. I misspoke. And here you could offer a queen trade, and you get queen back, and this could be a thing the computer barfed out at me, where you get this weird position. But here it's a draw. Black is up a pawn, but white's got some activity. Black's gonna have to castle and get the pieces out. But white has a bunch of weaknesses. But seeing that this is a quality from back here is just not gonna happen, right? So Gukesh does the human thing and defends the pawn because it was under attack. So he defends it, and we get g6, which is not the best either, because the bishop doesn't want to go on that diagonal. The bishop should either do this, go e6, and come out to d6, kind of x-raying to the queen. And after, something like this, perhaps, black wins the pawn. But hey, some pieces could get traded and we get a position like this. The game goes on. Black is comfortable here because the dark squares are nice for the bishop, and the light squared bishop's not doing a whole lot. So that could happen. The bishop could also go a different way, and we could get maybe f6 and g5, kicking the queen out of here. And when the queen drops back to d2, then we get this fork, right? And that's, a fork is always sad because you lose an exchange, and nobody wants that. So, yeah, especially with all the pawns on light squares, you got your light squared bishop. It's just like imagine we had the pawns here on a3, b4, c5. I mean, the light squared bishop would be able to have some fun, maybe get over here somehow to the king, but no. That's not going to happen here. So instead of any of that, Ding plays g6. Okay, what's the point? Well, the point is to get the dark squared bishop over here to this diagonal, the c1 h6 diagonal. Also, there was this nice little move here, a4, but b6. It's a very fun move. You can't take it or you lose the knight here, and you're probably gonna, be very sad after the game continues. Yeah, don't lose your pieces. So the queen would have to move somewhere, and game goes on, which is actually what happens. So let's see. Let me find it again. G6, A4, H5, and the queen goes to D6. But now Gukesh is kind of back in the game now. You see, white is even slightly better. The bishop is pinning the knight to the queen. This knight is also kind of pinned to the queen right here on E5. The light squared bishop is open now, and things are looking up. Things are looking up for Gukesh here. So let's see. We get the bishop out to h6, hitting the queen. But we have this nice intermezzo. Well, I don't know if I would call it an intermezzo. It's a counterattack. Let's call it that. Bishop takes c5, hitting the queen. And you can't take my queen as white because, well, you just lose a piece here. After all of this settles, you're just down a piece. So you can't do that. You got to move the queen by taking the bishop. Sorry, you got to take the bishop back. And then queen e4, getting out of the way of the dark squared bishop. Jasper, get out of here. Come on. Go on. Go on. He's trying to chew up my laptop charger. What's going on with that? I just hear this in the background. He's chewing on my charger. He's chewed through like 5 of my cords. It's wild. Having a cat is crazy. Jasper. Okay. Where were we? The knight jumps back to c6. We get, finally, is this the first time the knight has moved? I think this might be the first time this b1 knight has moved the entire game. It's moved 20. Okay. So we get the knight finally developing here to a3. Rook d7, knight back to c2, so that was the point, right? You can't go to c3. The knight struggles here, and going this way, you could kind of try to do something, but, he decides to go this way, a3, c2, and the queen finally takes the pawn on b6. It could have taken that, like, a while ago, right? You move the queen, you move the knight, you could take here. But then you get the rooks open to the file here, and I don't know if you kind of want that activity because the rook is coming to b5, you're doubling up, and maybe c5, knight c4, stuff like that. But the queen takes a few moves later after all of this. The queen finally takes here on b6, and even though we get rook b1 and rook b5, castles. White is still better, though, and black is up a pawn. Black is up a pawn and worse. That's not good. Now, here, if you look at this position, I'm sure the most natural move, especially after playing rook b5, is to follow it up with rook db1, right? Double on the file and hit b7, and life continues. No. I keep doing that. No, instead, Gukesh decides, let's put horsey in the corner. It's not very often you see a knight drop back to the corner like this in any kind of game, really. It's very, I don't see it very often. Maybe in some weird end games if you're trying to stop a pawn or something, but like going back to the corner is just strange. But the point obviously is to get the knight into b3 because you want to get pressure on d4. You maybe want to get into c5. That's kind of the main idea, is to get into c5 here. To put more pressure on b7, hit the rook here on d7. So Ding sees the knight is going to c5, sees there's nothing he can do to stop it, and says, let me play e6, so I get a getaway square for my rook. But the thing is, when you do that, the rook's pretty passive. The rook is pretty passive here. You know, like, it's going to take you a few moves to get that rook back in the game. Like, I don't know. Maybe you get a 5 at some point, but I don't know. I don't know. The computer instead wanted rook d6, and after knight c5, you can move the rook over here, and the rooks could double, and we get like a mass trade here, and the game goes on. Possibly e5, right? Stuff like this. But my cat is doing some wild stuff, guys. He's like in a basket right now. I don't even know. Oh my gosh, he's ridiculous. So castles knight a1 and knight b3. The knight jumps into c5. I really got to make sure he's not chewing on cords. If you're still watching the video, I appreciate your patience as I deal with my cat's antics. Hey. And if you're wondering why I don't just close the door in the back, it's because it makes the room all echoey. So I don't want to lock him out like that because the room gets echoey. But, you know, we're making do. The rook goes to b1 and queen c8. We see the eval bar spike. Yeah. So all of this build up here with the rook being pretty passive on e7. Yeah, the queen goes back to c8. And yeah, the game is over here, unfortunately, because what you should have done is disconnect the rooks by going knight b4. This seems like a pretty natural move. It makes sense. You disconnect the rooks. That's usually a good thing. You know, you're solidified by your pawn here. And yeah, sure, you're going to lose the pawn, but you were up a pawn anyway. So now material's just equal and you're going to try and, you know, figure stuff out. Okay, my cat was trying to chew up the cords for my computer, so I did end up locking him out and closing the door. Anyway, you would try and consolidate here, or like, you know, figure stuff out. But instead of that, he decides to defend by dropping the queen back. Now, to be fair, he doesn't have much time. Neither of them do. He's got like 7.5 minutes, but he spends like 30 seconds here. And yeah, blunders the game. Blunders the game. Now, it's move 28. They get extra time when they reach move 40. So they have to make like 12 more moves to get some extra time, and he's got 7 minutes. So like, yeah, he's got to play pretty quickly. Not enough time to think. Your heart rate is elevated. You're just like panicking, right? And you drop the queen back to c8. You miss this tactic of queen takes c6. And the game is over. Why queen takes c6? Well, you just lose the piece. You just lose the knight. Because if you try to recapture with the queen, well, then you just lose the queen. And you can't even take that bishop because of this. And if you take with the pawn, then rook takes. And you're pinned to the king. And you're going to lose your queen that way. So yeah, pretty rough way to end the game there. But hey, GUKESH takes the lead here, round 10 of the World Chess Championship. Very exciting. We'll have to see if Ding can strike back, or if it's just going to continue. You know, if it's draws from here on out, then GUKESH is going to win. If GUKESH wins again, then it's not looking too great for the current world champion, Ding Liren. But hey, it'll be cool to see what happens. If you made it to the end of the video, as always, I appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.